Hi, welcome back to our study in ancient Mediterranean history. I am Dr. David Santos and will be your professor for this lecture. So we're going to look more closely at the Roman Empire. In the previous lecture, we looked at the beginning of Rome, the mythical origins, and we looked at the beginning of the Republic and all the way to the fall of the Republic. We're going to rehash a little bit of that right now. So let's get started. So in terms of the Roman historians and historiography and authors, I just want to remind you of a few, especially some of these important ones. So Cicero is the first guy we're going to talk about. He's renowned for his eloquence. He provides this vivid look at the late Republic and the Republican politics and the tension between traditional ideas and the reformers. So his letters and his speeches reveal not just the political actions, but personal insight into the changing time. So Sallust, he's quite different. He's a moralist. He critiques the greed and the ambition that he believed led to Rome's internal decay. And his works not only inform us of the historical events, but also reflect on their broader social implications. Livy, he's one we've heard a few times. He's writing during Augustus's reign, and he offers this monumental narrative of Rome's early history. His work is both a celebration of Rome's greatness and also is kind of a cautionary tale of what it looks like when a empire goes awry. So as we move into the imperial period, first one we look at is Tacitus. He delivers these sharp, often cynical analysis of emperors and their actions and their politics, of their rule. Through his works, the Annals and Histories, we get kind of a glimpse into the intrigue and corruption of the Julio, Claudian, and Flavian dynasties, and we'll get into those in the future. Suetonius, in the 12 Caesars, shifts to a more biographical format, which is pretty unique to his writing, and he blends the scandals and insights into the lives of Roman rulers. So finally, we have Plutarch, another one we've heard a number of times. Plutarch, he offers this unique perspective through his parallel lives, and he's pairing Roman leaders with Greek counterparts, such as Julius Caesar, pairing him with Alexander the Great, drawing lessons from their characters and deeds. All right, so in addition to these authors, we also have archaeological evidence, which is important. So that includes inscriptions, coins, which is numismatics, and monuments. So inscriptions, whether decrees or tombstones or epitaphs, they provide official records and personal stories. Coins serve as it's called miniature snapshots of a particular moment. And an example of that could be the Judea Capta coin, which you're going to read about if you're taking the class. So the Judea Capta coin is kind of a commemoration of the capture and destruction of some of the Jewish folks in the temple, putting down the revolt, the Jewish revolt. And so Rome would stamp these coins, send them out across the land, so everyone would see what took place in this image on this coin. And that would be a warning to anyone else in the rest of the empire. You don't want to have a revolt, because this is what happens to you when it happens. Monuments, obviously, like the Arch of Titus, also related to Jewish revolt, but here would be a giant monument. And they use these things as a mechanism for propaganda to deliver a message to everyone around. And it declares their own national pride and national glory, and describes their military as well. Okay, so transition from the Roman Republic to the empire is an interesting study, and it really took one guy to eventually do that, and that's Augustus. But first, there's a process that happens, and we begin with the first triumvirate, and it was established in 60 BC. It's an informal political alliance between three of Rome's most powerful figures, first one being Julius Caesar, second one being Pompey the Great, and Marcus Licinius. And this alliance was driven by this mutual self-interest, as the three men sought to consolidate power and bypass the Senate's resistance to their individual ambitions. So Caesar, an ambitious military leader and obviously a rising politician, sought support for his campaigns and legislation. Pompey, he's the celebrated general. He desired land grants for his veterans and ratification of his eastern conquests. And Crassus, he's renowned as the wealthiest man in Rome. He craved military prestige to match his financial dominance, and by uniting their resources, influence, and networks, the three effectively were able to dominate Roman politics. So the alliance, however, was inherently unstable with that many characters and strong figures. That's probably what you would expect. So each member is pursuing their own interests. Crassus dies in 53 BC, and during a horribly disastrous battle of Carthage. Carrhae. So against the Parthians, and he marked the beginning of the triumvirate's collapse. He had sought military glory. He wanted to bolster his political standing, but his defeat and death not only deprived the alliance of its balancing figure, but also highlighted very specific tensions between Caesar and Pompey. They were not great friends. So with Crassus gone, the power dynamic shifted to a direct rivalry between the two remaining members. And as Pompey grew, increasingly aligned with the Senate, he begins to view Caesar's growing popularity and military success as a threat to his own authority. And it was. So their rivalry ultimately erupted into a civil war following Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon, and you've heard that term, I'm sure, in 49 BC, an act of defiance against the Senate and Pompey's authority. So this bold move marked the end of the triumvirate and the beginning of this prolonged struggle for control of Rome. Pompey, backed by the Senate, initially commanded superior resources, but was ultimately defeated by Caesar in 48 BC. The collapse of the First Triumvirate not only ended a fragile alliance, but also marked a critical turning point in Rome and more broadly in Roman history, leading to the downfall of the Republic and the rise of this imperial rule under Caesar and his successors. So Augustus's residence is an important conversation we should have as we're looking at Rome. His home and the attached temple. So Augustus's residence on the Palatine Hill was a carefully chosen, and the location is very symbolic to the Roman people. It reflects both his personal image and political aspirations. It's situated near the legendary hut of Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome. So the placement of his home underscored Augustus's connection to Rome's foundational past by living in the proximity of this revered site. So he's making a statement. So as the Republic falls, Augustus becomes the first emperor, and he does so by playing politics, keeping the Senate involved, making it appear as though while he is the emperor, he makes it look like he's not fully taking control, even though he is, and just continues to play politics. He did it very well. And as he did so, he continued to consolidate power. But he does these things. He presents himself as a Roman traditionalist, and this household is one of the ways in which he does that. He presents himself as a leader in continuity with Rome's origins. So he subtly reinforces his role as the restorer and protector of Roman traditions. The house itself was notable, and it was somewhat modest, and it's this deliberate conquest to the opulence expected of someone wielding autocratic power. Augustus, he cultivated an image of humility and republican virtue, using his residence to project values of simplicity and self-reliance. So this modesty was meant to reassure the Roman populace and Senate that despite the unparalleled authority, he remained a servant of the state and the values of the republic. So that was always the problem with Julius Caesar, is the people expected him to be an emperor. It's in the biblical terms, it's much like the story of Saul. And God tells the people, as they say, we want a king like all the other nations, and God warns them, okay, I'm going to give you a king just like all the other nations. He's going to be a terrible king, and he's going to tax you, and he's going to, broadly speaking, he's going to be bad for you. But they say, that's we want a king like everyone else. They expected Julius Caesar to be a king like everyone else had, and they didn't necessarily want that. So they killed Julius Caesar, and Augustus was just a better politician and able to take control of things without even anyone knowing it, and without a battle. So the simplicity of Augustus really kind of veiled his true power and the centralized authority that he took. So his choice of residence was as much a political statement as it was a personal preference, blending symbolic association with Rome's past and the calculated projection of modesty. So the modest home, in its location, is this physical manifestation of Augustus's carefully crafted image, a ruler who embodied Rome's ancient virtues while ushering in a new era of stability and imperial strength. So it's also related to a temple, and it's the Temple of Apollo was constructed in 28 BC, was a monumental addition to the Palatine Hill, and held deep personal and political significance for Augustus. He built it adjacent to his residence. The temple honored Apollo, whom Augustus regarded as his personal patron deity. This connection to Apollo symbolized wisdom, harmony, victory, aligned with Augustus's vision for his rule and Rome's future. So the temple was not only a religious site, but also a statement of Augustus's close association with divine favor, and it reinforced his role as chosen leader to restore Rome's greatness. So architecturally, the Temple of Apollo was this masterpiece of Roman innovation and grandeur, constructed of brilliant white marble, so very classical in the way we think of classical. Has these gilded doors. It stood as this striking emblem of splendor and refinement. This temple featured an elaborate portico. It's adorned with sepulchres of Apollo, Diana, and others. So it's emphasizing the divine lineage and cosmic order associated with Apollo. So additionally, the inclusion of Greek and Latin libraries within the temple highlighted Augustus's commitment to culture and learning further integrates his vision of Rome and what he's trying to project to all of society. He's wanting to present himself as wanting an intellectual Rome. And Rome liked that as an idea, and they're drawing that from Greek culture in particularly. So religiously and politically, the temple served as this powerful tool of the state and was a tool of propaganda. It linked Augustus' leadership to divine approval and cosmic stability. So it reinforces his role as a divinely sanctioned ruler. And once he's able to accomplish that, he's a master of using this kind of propaganda to build the Rome that he wants and to establish himself as a new emperor. So the integration of Augustus' residence and Temple Apollo into daily life and the broader empire transformed that location into, it becomes the hub of political and religious activity. So together, the house and the temple symbolize the seamless union of Augustus's personal authority with Rome's spiritual and civic identity. The temple served as a venue for official receptions, ceremonies, and public rituals, so reinforcing Augustus's piety and divine favor. Meanwhile, his nearby residence emphasizes his role as a humble yet divinely guiding leader. Okay, continuing on, I want to look at governance and administration of the empire in three parts: the imperial bureaucracy, military organizations, and urbanizations along with infrastructure. So Augustus's governance and administration of the Roman Empire established a foundation for imperial stability and longevity. The imperial bureaucracy was carefully organized specifically to oversee the vast territories of the empire, with provinces divided into two categories, senatorial and imperial. Senatorial provinces were relatively stable and governed by the proconsuls, while imperial provinces often were frontier regions, required military oversight, and they're managed by legates directly appointed by Augustus. This division ensured efficient governance and tighter control over areas critical to the empire's security and economy. Taxation was streamlined under Augustus with the introduction of censuses and a more standardized system to ensure consistent revenue, minimizing corruption, maximizing the resources available for state projects. So the military played a vital role in maintaining the empire's stability and advancing Romanization across conquered territories. So Augustus restructured the Roman army into a professional standing force with long-term enlistments, ensuring loyalty and readiness. So the Praetorian Guard is an elite unit tasked with protecting the emperor. They were established as a symbol of imperial authority. So the army not only defended the empire's borders, but they also facilitated the spread of Roman culture, law, language into newly acquired regions. So military veterans were often settled in these colonies, further embedding Roman influence in frontier provinces and promoting integration into the broader Roman world. If you think back, the Syrians did this in a slightly different fashion. Babylonians did this slightly different fashion, but this is a common approach. You want your culture to be spread throughout your entire empire. So let's look at urbanization and infrastructure, which the development of that under Augustus and his successors were crucial in shaping the empire's identity and functionality. So the important things were roads. There's this extensive network of roads during this time period in the Roman imperial period. They connected the provinces back to Rome. And they say all roads lead to Rome. This is why they say that. Everything funnels back into the central location of the city of Rome within the Roman Empire. So we look at it as this monumental achievement. So important things of it, they could mobilize their military much more quickly. Mobilization of people, of military, of goods, the speed of being able to mobilize was dramatically increased in this Roman imperial time period because of these roads. So it begins to change everything, how people looked at staying in one location, how people looked at moving, how you moved goods. So much change because of roads. Think about it today. If you were to wipe out our roads, what would take place? Everything would suddenly become much more localized and regionalized, and that's not what Rome envisioned for its empire. So we start to get aqueducts, we get forums, we get temples, we get amphitheaters. All these were important in symbolizing Rome's grandeur and reinforced the cultural and political dominance of the empire. So together, these developments created a cohesive imperial framework that linked distant provinces back to the capital, fostering the shared Roman identity. So, Roman religion and social structures. So, Roman religion is interesting. It's deeply integrated into both public and private life, shaping the social and cultural fabric of the empire. Public religion was centered on the worshiping of the pantheon of gods and goddesses, with rituals, festivals, sacrifices organized to secure divine favor for the state. Temples and priestly offices such as the Pontifex Maximus underscored the connection between religion and governance alongside traditional polytheism. They also had mystery cults, and some were localized. Some were these foreign mystery cults like that of Isis, Serapis. So you find Serapariums there. You find temples to Isis. You find Bacchus, which was not one Rome liked a lot because the Bacchanalia tended to be louder and much more uncomfortable to Roman sensibilities than some of these others. Mithras would be another one. So they become very popular. Isis actually becomes the most popular and is able to be synchronized with a lot of other religions or goddesses. Actually, gods and goddesses. So they offer personal salvation and a more intimate spiritual experience. Now, when I say personal salvation, they're not talking about heaven or eternal life like we would when we present the gospel. They are talking about the temporal salvation first and foremost. So basically, you join ISIS, and as you become part of the cult, you would get greater connections with other people who are also in the cult. So through those connections, you would be able to improve your standard of living primarily. They would also help you in a transition to the doom and gloom of the life, whatever the life to come is. They would help you in that transition, be slightly better off, but it was a pretty dreary expectation. So the establishment of the imperial cult marked a significant development in Roman religion, intertwining divine reverence with political loyalty. Augustus initiated this tradition by subtly associating the rule with divine favor, emphasizing his role as the restorer of peace and order. After his death, Augustus was deified, and temples and ceremonies were dedicated to his worship. The imperial cult became a unifying force across the empire, reinforcing the emperor's authority and fostering a shared Roman identity among diverse populations. Participation in the cult was both a religious act and a demonstration of allegiance to the state, solidifying the emperor's role as both a political and quasi-divine figure. And I say quasi-divine, but later on, there is no more quasi-divine. They take the ideas found in the cult of Isis, really Serapis and Isis, and within those cults, they see the idea, just like back in the time of Pharaoh, where the emperor is the god king, and when one emperor passes away, the next one would be sort of quickened to become this new god king who is now deified as he became king. The Romans liked this idea of deification, but earlier than this, no one was ever deified while they were still alive. It was more like a memorial kind of a thing, giving an honorary title. At this point, it becomes much more than just this title, and they start to become deified while they're still alive. And again, they become God when they become king. So, Roman social structure, it's this rigid hierarchy with these clear distinctions between classes. At the top were the patricians, the elite class of landowners and political leaders, followed by the plebeians. They're the commoners who made up the majority of the population and engaged in various trades and professions. Slaves formed the lowest rung in society, constituting a significant portion of the population and serving in roles ranging from household servants to skilled laborers. Interestingly, in this time period, slaves could actually own slaves. It's just one of those little strange anomalies. Roman society relied on a sense of collective identity, reinforced by shared traditions, religious practices, and civil engagement. These social divisions were both a source of stability and tension, influencing the dynamics of Roman governance and culture throughout the empire's history. So let's look at someone who's important to us, Herod the Great, his role in the Roman Empire. We'll look at his rise and relationship with Rome. So Herod's rise to power was marked by his adept navigation of Roman politics and strategic familiar alliances. So, supported by Rome, Herod secured his position as king of Judea in 37 BC. And with the backing of Mark Antony and later Octavian, who changed his name to Augustus. So, his marriage to a member of the Hasmonean dynasty bolstered his legitimacy among the Jewish population, though it also introduced significant familial strife. Herod's reign was characterized by ambitious, let's just call them projects that are architectural, including the monumental expansion of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and the construction of these various other projects. One specifically is this grand port city symbolizing Judea's integration into the Roman world. So he's taken the playbook of the Greeks and he's trying to Romanize where previous groups have tried to Hellenize Jews in Jerusalem. But it's not really going to work out. This becomes a problem area for Rome. So Herod maintained a close and loyal relationship with Rome, which was really pretty vital for his political survival and the stability of Judea. So initially, aligning with Mark Antony, Herod adeptly switched his loyalty to Octavian after Antony's death. which was in 31 BC. This loyalty earned him Augustus' favor, allowing him to retain his throne and secure Roman support for his kingdom. As a client king, Herod acted as a stabilizing force in the volatile region, balancing Roman interests with local governance. His ability to suppress revolts and manage internal dissent helped ensure peace in Judea. Well, we're going to say peace of Rome, which was all Rome was really concerned about. So Herod's role in the Roman Empire was pivotal. He bridged the cultural and political divide between Rome and Judea. So while his loyalty to Rome earned him imperial favor, his rule was not without controversy. His authoritarian methods, heavy taxation, and ruthless treatment of his political opponents alienated many of his subjects. And despite these challenges, Herod's reign left a lasting legacy, especially through these architectural achievements, which symbolized Judea's integration into the Roman Empire while preserving its unique cultural identity. I mean, remember, this is from Roman perspective. So, a couple other things about Herod. He is an Idumean Jew. Those are the Idumeans came from the east. They're pushed during the Hellenistic period. They're pushed down into Judea. They were south of Jerusalem, and these Idumean Jews are forced to become Jews. But if you ever wondered, hey, how come when the wise men come to that Herod, and Herod recognizes the prophecy they're talking about, well, how do you know about that? Well, that's because he's been trained in Jewish culture. All right. Interaction with Jewish communities. Interaction between the Roman Empire and Jewish communities was marked by tension that culminated in significant revolts and harsh Roman suppression. The Great Jewish Revolt is 66 to 73 AD. It began as a response to heavy taxation, religious tensions, and growing resentment against Roman rule. The revolt saw initial Jewish successes, including the capture of Jerusalem, but it's ultimately crushed by the Roman forces under Vespasian and his son Titus. The destruction of the Second Temple in AD 70 was this defining moment, and it changes all of Jewish culture. So now Jews are going to be living in the diaspora, and Jews thought that their temple was going to be restored, and finally later had to come to grips that it's not going to be restored at that time. The next one is the Bar Kokhba revolt. It's 132 to 35 AD. It was sparked by Emperor Hadrian's policies, including the establishment of a Roman colony, Aelia Capitolina on the ruins of Jerusalem, and the banning of circumcision. So this led Simon Bar Kokhba, who was hailed as many as the Messiah. So here's a guy, he comes along, he is the new Messiah. He's going to help throw off the chains of Rome. It's not going to work out. But the Hadrian changes the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina. Basically, Hadrian's capital. So here we got Simon. He was hailed by many to be the Messiah. The revolt was one of the most formidable challenges Rome faced. So despite early victories, the rebellion was brutally suppressed by Roman forces, resulting in massive casualties and the widespread devastation of Judea. So following the revolt, Hadrian imposed severe restrictions on Jewish religious practices, and expelled many Jews from Jerusalem, further dispersing the Jewish population, intensifying their alienation from the Roman state. Now, I just want to add that this is in part a time period where Jews and Christians begin to be less friendly towards one another. Because remember, Christians in the church originally is mostly made up of Jews. But Christians could not say that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah because they already had a Messiah. They knew who the true Messiah was. So they depart. There's a moment in which they're able to leave. They leave, and the Jews that were left there and were brutalized under Roman military forces saw the Christians as abandoning their cause and leaving them to be defeated. So tensions right there begin to happen. So these revolts, they have this profound, lasting effect on both Jewish communities and Roman Empire. For the Jews, the loss of the political and religious centers marked a shift towards a identity of the diaspora, of the dispersion. And there's an evolution of rabbinic Judaism. So it's at this point the temple's lost. There was a time period. If you were in the diaspora and you're staying in Babylon, you are worshiping in synagogues. So this changes the nature of Judaism. And once the second temple is destroyed, now that kind of worship becomes the primary form of worship, and less temple centered because you don't have a temple, less sacrifice centered because you don't have a means of making sacrifice, at least not one that would be that would fit the law. So now you're having to figure out what does your worship look like in the diaspora. So that all changes. The legacy of these conflicts shaped Jewish-Roman relations and left this everlasting mark on the history of the Jewish people. Okay, so I'm feeling like we should have done this portion up front further, but this is what we have for today. Key emperors. We're just going to look at a few here. Obviously, Caesar Augustus is critical for us. 27 BC to 14 AD. He established the Roman Empire and laid its foundational structures, including the imperial bureaucracy and military reforms. His reign brought the Pax Romana, so that's the Peace of Rome. And the Peace of Rome is really peace through military suppression and oppression. So you got the Pax Romana. But many people would definitely agree, though, that it was a safer time period. If you're on the roads at night during the Pax Romana, you're less likely to get robbed than without the Pax Romana. So when you look at it, at the history of this, it kind of has mixed reviews. So he had a lot of monuments built, architectural projects, and Augustus carefully cultivated his image as a restorer of the Republic while he's consolidating power. So Tiberius, Augustus's stepson and successor, he continued many of his predecessors' policies, but is often remembered for his increasingly autocratic and reclusive behavior. He didn't like public life that much. So while maintaining stability and the prosperity of the empire, Tiberius faced criticism for his harsh administration and reliance on the imperial guard, leading to this growing unease among the Senate and the Roman elites. He's actually the guy. He got sick of all these foreign religions, especially that of the Bacchus and the Bacchanalia. And he said, just get rid of all these things. So a bunch of these temples were dismantled and tossed into the river. They were pretty popular though, so they came back shortly after that. So Nero is an important one. He's infamous for his erratic and tyrannical rule, marked by the cultural patronage and grandiose projects. He wanted to show the world that he was as good or better than previous emperors. So his reign is plagued by excessive spending, definitely persecution of Christians, suspicion of involvement in the Great Fire of Rome. Nero's, I mean, that's a big one because he blames that one on Christians. But his unpopularity led to revolts and his eventual suicide. And it plunges the empire into chaos of the year of the four emperors. Trajan, he is 98 to 117 AD. He's celebrated as one of Rome's greatest emperors, expanding the empire to its maximum territorial extension through successful campaigns, mostly moving east. So his reign is marked by the significant public works. He gets Trajan's Forum and Market, reflecting his focus on infrastructure, urban development. He's known for having a fair administration. He embodied the ideal of the best ruler. Hadrian is Trajan's successor, shifted focus from expansion to consolidation. And this happens mostly because he heads north and he runs into some barbarians that he didn't want to deal with, probably more like the Germanic barbarians. So what he does is he pulls back from the European expansion. He pulls that back and he builds something called Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall was meant to keep those barbarians out, create a solid border, and keep the barbarians out of European Rome. So he also is the Hadrian's Wall, by the way, is in Britain. So he's a patron of the arts and architecture. He rebuilt the Parthenon, and he cultivated Greek culture throughout the empire. So he has these extensive travels and focus on securing Rome's frontiers, and he leaves this tremendous legacy of stability and cultural flourishing. Antonius, he presides over a period of peace and prosperity, often considered the height of the Pax Romana. His reign was notable for administrative efficiency and legal reforms, including protections for slaves. So he's 138 AD to about 161 AD. He didn't really have any military campaigns. He was more interested in fortifying Rome's frontiers, focusing on internal stability. So, those were some of the key guys right there. Just broadly, we'll make our conclusion here. The early Roman Empire, spanning from Augustus's establishment of the Principate in 27 BC to the stable reign of Antonius in 161 AD, is the transformative era that solidified Rome's dominance, and it really shapes this enduring legacy. This period is characterized by political innovation, territorial expansion, cultural integration, fostering the Pax Romana, a time of relative peace and prosperity from a Roman perspective. Emperors like Augustus and Trajan expanded the empire's borders, consolidated power, while others, such as Hadrian and Antoninus, focused on stability and internal development. Despite challenges like revolts and administrative complexities, the early empire successfully integrated diverse populace through its military, through its infrastructure, through its legal system. And it leaves this unified culture and political framework that would influence Western cultures and Western civilization generally for many, many centuries. So, as always, I hope our studies are continuing to be a blessing. And if I can do anything for you, please contact me and let me know. God bless. Decades after the reign of Augustus, a small group of Christians gathered in secrecy in a Roman home. By this time, the empire's vast road network, originally built for military dominance, had become the highway for the spread of this new faith. The words of Paul and other apostles reached the farthest provinces, carried by traders, soldiers, and travelers. Persecuted by the emperors like Nero, but ultimately surviving, Christianity would grow to transform the very empire that sought to suppress it. As we conclude, consider how our infrastructure and policies of the Roman Empire, designed for control, unintentionally sowed the seeds of a faith that would outlast the empire itself.